Welcome to today's installment of Museum Moments. My name is Ellie Gettinger, and I am the Education Director at Jewish Museum Milwaukee. We are delighted to have you here today on this day after Memorial Day to talk about Jewish service in the military. And specifically, we're going to be focused on two military stories. But I think there's so much, within our museum that looks at service and the idea of service to our country, specifically in terms of military service. I can tell you when the museum was designed, this was a particularly important piece of the story we were telling to so many of our volunteers, that they felt that there had been a kind of knock against the Jewish people in terms of being engaged in the military, and that we had been and that they needed to really tell that story. And I think it's pretty central to our collections. It's central to the way to our permanent exhibit. And very often, these are the stories that are researched and come back to us. And we've had some amazing interns over the years who have taken on some of these really large military collections to explore them. So I'm going to be looking at some of their work today as well. So thank you to Chandra, thank you to Jackson, and to all of the people who've actually helped to get me pieces of this story so that Jay Highland could give me this information. So I'm going to be reflecting on two of our histories today. One is a guy named, we're going to start with a guy named, and actually before we start with a guy named Leonard Bessman, let's start with this quote. This quote is central to the Museum of Jewish American Military History that's in DC. And this is what they put forth as their kind of front and center statement of why they are, their museum is centered around this. That Americanism is a question of spirit, conviction, and purpose, not of creed or birthright. And as Jews, that we can be engaged in that spirit, that conviction, and purpose, and never question whether we can do that fully as Jews or not. And that's so important to so many of our community members who are involved in the military, and so important to so much of the work that you see in the community today in a number of different spheres. So we are going to be looking at Leonard Bessman's record. And this museum moment is in two lines, both in the sense of Memorial Day and memorializing someone who died in the military, and also in terms of National Military Appreciation Month. And actually, this is also fits into Jewish American History Month. All of these things circulate at one time. It's all happening in May, and so I'm happy to tell this story. It was new to me, and it was kind of a fun one to learn. Leonard Bessman, as you can see from these two telegraphs, was actually missing in action, and he was captured behind enemy lines in North Africa. So Leonard Bessman's military story, though, starts way sooner than this. He starts his military story in the late 20s, and he ends up in Nicaragua. And so by the time World War II starts, he's in his 30s. He's not going to be drafted, and he actually enlists and re-enlists and joins the army and ends up in kind of a counterintelligence role in Northern Africa, where he is captured in a truly kind of bravado show of courage, where he sends other people back to tell people that he's been taken, and he holds them off at gunpoint and is taken. He's shot in this time period, and he's actually kept with a bunch of Italian partisans, and they are in North Africa. They're moved to Italy, this is where he meets up with the Italian partisans. They're moved to Italy, and from there, he actually escapes from the POW camp that he's staying in. He hears it's going to be transferred to Germany and doesn't feel like it's going to be safe for him. So he moves over. He figures out with some of these Italian partisans how to escape. They hide in the countryside until he can get back to what is still British occupied behind, and is able to rejoin his troops and go on. But he's in this POW camp for 5.5 months. And at this time, he's one of thousands of Milwaukeeans who are in the Army. And according to Rabbi Switchko, who wrote kind of the early definitive history on Jewish Milwaukee, he wrote it in the 1950s, there were about 2,400 Jewish men and women in the military, serving in the military during World War II. This is, there were about 700 to 800 Jews who served in the military during World War I. Jewish service, Wisconsin Jewish service in the military has happened since the Civil War, and has been a part of the legacy of kind of service to our country more broadly. So Bessman survives this kind of crazy capture attack. He's healed in this time period. He does say he's taken good care of, and he's healed, but he does recognize that he wouldn't be safe in a German POW camp, and so he escapes and enters. He becomes actually kind of a public figure on some standpoint. Ernie Pyle is a writer who's writing about the war, and he's really doing it at a grassroots level. He's talking about the soldiers who are involved in the war, what's going on, who are the people that are being impacted. And this is what he wrote in Leonard Bessman's book copy of a book he wrote called Here Is Your War, which actually features Bessman's story. He says, for my good friend Lenny Bessman, who strives more deeply than anyone I know, the awful majesty and degradation too of mankind at war, I'm proud, Lenny, that we are friends and that you approve this book of which you are a part. And in the book itself, he says, of all the soldiers I have ever known, he was the most sensitive to the beauties of war and the big tragedy of life. Maybe that was because he was a Jew, or maybe it wasn't. I don't know. Ernie Pyle actually dies a year after this book is published. He dies in the Pacific Theater in Japan, but becomes his kind of statements about what the military looks like on the ground, gave Americans this real sense of what life was like for those people serving. And Leonard Bessman becomes one of the people who is featured in that. Bessman goes on to become, he is an attorney before the war, and it's interesting, according to Switchko, again, about half of all Jewish doctors and attorneys in this time period are not in Milwaukee at all. They are serving in the military in somewhere, and Bessman is a great example of that. And he ends up coming back and serving his country in a different way. He becomes a federal bankruptcy judge. And there is a plaque to him in the federal court in Milwaukee. Our second person is named Arthur Grossman. And Arthur Grossman's sister is Roz Grossman, who is actually Lloyd Levine's mother. So we are so happy to be able to share this story. And this is a story of letters. One of the big things that we got from a lot of different collectors in recent years is a number of letters back and forth that really give a sense of that on-the-ground feeling. Grossman went to Riverside High School. He was born in 1918. He went to UW-Madison, and he enlists in the war and goes to officer training in Kansas in 1941. So he is, and he's sent to France. He writes these amazing letters back and forth. This is one of those letters. And I think there are several things that I love about this letter. One, it says, it is past the stage where you say it is good for other sons because everyone is thinking this. They would leave no one to eventually get it done, the war itself. Be proud that you have strong sons to help salvage homes, families, and the ability to raise kids to love joy, freedom, the pursuit of happiness, the rights to worship as we please. These aren't just words anymore, for some have already died in their defense, and nowhere could there be a more glorious cause for which to give one's life. He also has some kind of humorous letters back and forth with his family. One of my favorite things is that he and his sister clearly have this great close relationship where he's bemoaning his love life. He says, I should probably sign off with lone wolf or something. And in another one of these letters, he's always asking for more letters, cigarettes, apple strudel, cookies, and finally fruitcake because it stays fresh very well. Sadly, Arthur Grossman dies in combat. He is in France and he dies in Brittany, and it takes, at first he's listed as missing in action, and then he is found to be dead behind enemy lines. He dies on August 4th, 1944, or on August 4th, 1944. He dies there. And then this is a piece that his parents were sent by the chaplain with the 6th Armored Division. And he says, "It's with deepest regret that I write this letter to you, especially since the conditions have made it so belated. The War Department informed you of the death of your son in Brittany, France, and it is my last wish that I should add to the remorse or sorrow occasioned by your great loss. But I do desire to remind you that your loss is also ours, and it is our hope that you will permit us to express our sympathy to and with you at this time. He will never be forgotten as long as one of his Army's associates is left, and as long as his collections with the Jewish Museum Milwaukee, for he truly is respected and loved by all, both officers and men, for his remarkable personality and character. May I add, as his chaplain, I personally knew him and admired him for those inner qualities of faith that he revealed to me on many instances. He died bravely and courageously. He died that we might live, and he was buried with military honors in the United States Military Cemetery in Western France, with a Jewish chaplain officiating at the burial service. A memorial service is held by the division to give reverent homage to him and his comrades who paid the supreme sacrifice for us. May the Lord bless, comfort, and keep you in my prayer." So this is a picture of his parents and many of his letters, which we have at his gravesite in France. And you can see this is Sarah and Frank Grossman, again, Lloyd Levine's grandparents. And for us, this is the sort of collection that gives us a sense of someone who wasn't able to preserve their writings on their own, who wasn't able to give us an oral history, who wasn't able to write this down. And we feel that this part of the Jewish Museum's legacy of collection is incredibly important. And it's really exciting for us to be able to share these pieces, to have interns who can work on this, and to have local researchers or national researchers who are looking for information about insights on Jewish servicemen to be able to come to this place. We appreciate their sacrifice. We thank everyone who's in the service, and we look forward to being able to have these conversations in person again soon. This is our museum moment for Tuesday. On Thursday, we're going to be exploring Shavuot, the holiday that's coming up. It starts on sundown on Thursday. That's at 2 o'clock here at Facebook Live. And if you've enjoyed this or any of our Facebook Live presentations, please feel free to make a donation at jewishmuseummilwaukee.org. Thanks very much and have a great day.